the beginning, as far as we're concerned, many of us believe that we have always been here, that ancestral beings with supernatural powers gave life to us here. The sacred sites, the sacred sites that we honour today were created by these supernatural beings. They came, some gave birth to us. They named a lot of the plants and animals. Firstly they created light for Aboriginal people because the earth was all in darkness. And then these supernatural beings, they went away. Their spirits went into trees, they went into rocks, they went into waterholes, into the ocean, they went into some of the paintings that they created of themselves, and they still dwell there today.
This is where I was brought to, a naked little boy. I was introduced to clothes, a new language because I spoke my own language. Would have been the age between 5, 7 in 1940, when Australia was fighting the German war then. Now psychologically and spiritually and emotionally, that institutionalisation of me being brought here stayed with me wherever I lived in the city environment, because it was a white system one had to fit into, and the white man's way. It was the white man's language that was being spoken, and his ways was the dominant ways, in fact the only ways. So there was that freedom of that oppression started to occur in the 70s realistically, where we started to set up our own program in social areas like health and law, and also we started to talk about making people aware through the dances and music that Aboriginal experiences was quite often forced on them by a power system which wasn't a good system because it was so restricting.
In the 60s, there was a lot of political struggle going on, street struggle going on, not only in this country, in the United States. I remember 1967 when you had the riots in Watts, and that sort of thing was, you know, against the Vietnam War. Everything was happening, and young people were saying, let my people go, and in this country you had the young blacks sort of wanting to be Malcolm X, and the ladies wanted to be Angela Davis. So, you know, it was really hitting the streets, and that was unusual for Aboriginal people. In the 70s, we talked about black power. Now, what they did, the media got hold of it and twisted it, and they're black terrorists and all this rubbish. And When we were talking about black power, we were talking about the power to control our own destiny.
We weren't counted on the census. They counted dogs and they counted the animals, but they didn't count the traditional owners of the country. So we campaigned to have this referendum that would include us in the census.
Was the establishment of the Aboriginal Embassy in 1972. Now, I went to Canberra and began participating in the Aboriginal Embassy. During that embassy, there were a number of progressively more difficult incidents or demonstrations. The police were constantly trying to pull the embassy down.
They said remove the tent. So they had to read the act to us. Remove the tent. I said, I literally fascist bastards, and then they hit us. You better believe it. Give it to us. That would have been the most violent demonstration I've ever been in. We'd had a moral victory, and we'd spread the message throughout the world because we were getting support from overseas. Well, in '73, Gough Whitlam, the new Prime Minister, called about 200 Aboriginal people together in Canberra, and we had a week of deciding what we were going to do with the arts. So we set up the Aboriginal Arts Board. Why were we so intent on forming the Aboriginal Arts Board? Well, the idea was to develop the artistic skills of Aboriginal people that were denied to them. For instance, they got a thing called NIDA, National Institute of Dramatic Art. Blacks were never allowed into that. There's lots of ways you can fight a cause. You can fight a cause writing plays, you can fight a cause dancing.
In the remote areas, you had especially a heavy church influence that came in the remote areas where people were so forbidden to participate in any of their own cultural practices over a long period of time that in the late 60s, when there was some beginning of a revival to corroboree and some of the dances that were happening, and there was a potential dollar to be earned from it through tourism, there were places where they actually had to import dancers to teach them how to do corroboree. This is how totally crushed the culture had been. And for urban Aboriginals, we had no chance, no place to see Aboriginal people perform.
There are two Indigenous cultures in Australia. One is Indigenous Australia, who we call the Aboriginals, and the other part of Indigenous Australia are the Torres Strait Islanders. The culture from the Torres Strait Islands are a Melanesian culture of the Pacific. Aboriginal Australian culture is unique in itself. The dreaming, It's very much a part of our way of life. It's not a practice, it's all a part of your whole being. These songs and dances that have come down through many of the thousands of years to us were performed as rituals, as part of initiation ceremonies, or at big gatherings when people shared things.
The Aboriginal culture, the Aboriginal dance, I feel the music is more, it's much more inward, it's much more spiritual, and it's a bit more contained than the Torres Strait Island dance. With the Torres Strait Islands, I find their dances are about celebrating. They're about celebrating life, death, birth, marriage, the return of loved ones, celebrating the men going out fishing to have a good catch and all of those sort of things.
One more time for Hama!
I think as a kid I always wanted to dance, but there was probably not enough money, there was probably not enough opportunity. I didn't think about it, I didn't dream about it for many, many years until I met Carol Johnson, a black American from Philadelphia who had come out here to start a school with the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people of Australia.
I went to Australia with the Eliopamare Dance Company, and then I became more involved with the urban people who wanted to express their ideas and their political situation. So I started teaching the dance, and they gave me material and ideas in terms of the things that they wanted to say, and we worked together, and the things that they wanted to say were very, very similar to things that black Americans were saying, except it was another culture and another place.
The first time I met Carol, and why I remember Carol so vividly, was because there was this incredible performance where the dancers that Carol had brought in with her, the people, the Aboriginal community where she had started her teaching, they came and they did a performance, and it was just amazing because we as urban Aboriginals had never seen anything like it. We had never seen our own people doing cultural performances.
And so along with Chica Dixon and a man by the name of Brian Siren, and we put together the concept of doing a 6-week course. And it was out of the 6-week course, which included dance, theater, writing, then I was prepared. The people said that isn't enough because we want to have careers, and you don't learn to have a career in any of the arts in 6 weeks.
So she wanted to come back and start a dance program, and she did. As a matter of fact, I got her first funds to kick her off. And she had 4 Corries there, 2 men and 2 women. The names escaped me, but I remember going over to the old Black Theatre in Redford when they first started, and I said to Carol, Christ, you'll never teach them, they got 4 left feet. Three months later, I got the shock of my life, how they'd developed.
Yes, I push in the rhythm.
We tried to emphasise the traditional dancing more, both Island and Aboriginal, by getting tutors to come down from the traditional parts of the country to teach at the school. And at the same time, we then had to go to Bowden Visas Dance Centre, which is a ballet dance centre in Sydney, and learn classical ballet and techniques that are involved there. And then we had people come in like Ronnie Arnold, a black American guy, who taught jazz ballet. And Aku, who taught us traditional African movement. So we had to experience all different, not just one dance form, but all different dance forms.
What's important about a school is that I think schools have helped us to realize that that you can get people to gather under a roof and you can carry on dance forms. And Carol came to Sydney to do that sort of work. And I think, again, I go back to Dunham, who informed all her dancers that wherever you go, that you can take a lot of the information that you've gathered from out and bring it under a roof and pass it out. And lots of people will take their information and they will go to and that's what teaching is. It starts with a person, and someone gives you an information and you twig and go, oh, I like that idea. And then you might take it and you'll teach 5 people, and there's another little person, and they'll say, well, I'm going to go back to where I come from. And so she's been a catalyst, like the catalyst before her, like the catalyst before her, like the catalyst before her.
There was another aspect of the dance school. It brought in other teachers of other cultures. And I remember there's a very good friend of mine, Penny, I think she was a Fijian. Another one was Lucy, I think she was a Filipino dancer, very good. And they introduced their style of dancing, their country's indigenous style of dancing, into the school, and the students were picking up all those different beautiful styles of indigenous style of dancing, as well as the formal ballet type and other contemporary style of dancing and tradition. So they were very well prepared to set up schools that could, I suppose, service the community like Australia, which was then moving into a multicultural society.
We have a school that has what would be considered in the U.S. as junior college accreditation. And their 2 professional dance companies have grown out of it, Bangarra Dance Theatre Australia, and then AIDT, Aboriginal Islander Dance Theatre.
No more boomerang. No more spear. Now all civilized. Colour, bar and beer. No more co-robbery, gay dance and din. Now we got movies, we got movies, we got movies, we got movies, 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 and pay to go in. No more sharing what the hunter brings. Now we work for money, then pay it back for things. Now we track bosses to catch a few bob. Now we go walk out on a bus to the job. Taxi! 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 1, time naked, who never knew shame. Now we put clothes on to hide. What's the name?
Looking now, if it wasn't for Carol, we wouldn't have been at this stage now. Given the calibre of her own background and coming here and looking at and seeing this whole people laid waste by the coloniser, and that the most important thing to the spirit, to the soul, was dance.
Black American people that came to this country brought with them styles of dance that probably would not have been introduced into this country had these companies or people not visited Australia. I just don't think that they can deny that there is a very, very big influence in Australia, a very, very black influence of American dancers, American choreographers in the dance here. Not as evident today, because I feel the dancers that are coming out now have discovered that with their technique that they've learned, you know, the different dance styles that they learn, the different traditional dance styles that they've learned, they now have a vocabulary of their own.
Art to me is a means for expressing one's culture, and time again, when you see that you take the culture away from Indigenous peoples, those communities seem to lose the essence of who they are and what they're on about. And it's organisations such as NAISDA that provides an opportunity for some lost individuals to come back and find out more about themselves. So it's vitally important, because you'll have a people without a soul if you don't have art and culture.
I think in a sense that maybe Australia doesn't want a black dance school. We have not had the support. All these institutions that are out there now for the white mainstream are fully developed institutions in less time than what NAISDA's been around. NAISDA's been there for 20 years. We're in the same old church building for 20 years.
The whole form of dance is political. and it's not given the importance that it should. I mean, I could say that given it's a big part of this society, this culture, governments have problems recognising this whole aspect, and I think it's deliberate too. It's calculated because it's a tie to the land.